This is why giving employees equity in a company can be an absolutely terrible idea. In the mid-90s, United Airlines was well on its way to being the poster child for employee benefits programs. 12 months after handing a little over half their company to the employees, revenue per employee was up 10%, sick leave was down 17%, and grievances had fallen by 74%. Additionally, employees suggested that they loved working at the new and improved United. And of course, where would we be without mentioning the almighty share price? In that year, United Airlines outperformed the S&P 500 by a whopping 67%, adding $4 billion of shareholder value. To the outside observer, this blistering start could do no wrong. But fast forward 5 years and it was a much gloomier picture. So what happened? How did United Airlines go from first class to no class in record time? Well, grab your favorite beverage, sit back and relax, because you're about to learn how business works. Despite the rosy start, there was tensions from the beginning. In exchange for ownership, employees had collectively given up $4.8 billion in wages and benefits. Pilots took a 15.7% wage cut. Machinists, who were responsible for maintaining the safety of the aircraft, lost between 8 and 9% of their salary, whilst flight attendants chose to forego the deal entirely, noting they couldn't afford the wage cuts. You can't eat stock, apparently. What's interesting about this is, according to the Harvard Business Review, less than 2% of all employee ownership programs actually involve wage givebacks. The second major failing was the way the program was structured. As has been mentioned, not all employees received stock, and of those who did, they would only receive stock for a maximum of 5 years, after which the benefit would cease. Additionally, anyone not involved in the original deal would receive nothing. Yes, that's right, the machinists, the pilots who joined after got none of the benefits their counterparts had. I want you to take a minute to think about how this might create an us versus them culture. To add insult to injury, in the year 2000, as the contract negotiations with the pilots stalled, then CEO James Goodwin announced a merger with US Airways. This really was the nail in the coffin, as the merger threatened the seniority of existing United pilots. The third major failing was the changes to management. If you've ever worked for a high-performing organization, you know that culture is championed by its employees, but spearheaded by management. Whenever a big change is implemented, it requires a constant and ongoing effort by senior management, or it is destined to fail. From my reading on the matter, it would seem that United fell into the latter basket. You see, despite the deal getting across initially, managers within the company and the associated unions had failed to consider how their detractors might gain power in the future. At the pilots union, management who had supported the share plan were booted almost immediately after. The machinists, despite being part of the deal, were never really that engaged, and those who had opposed the move originally began to gain significant power within the executive ranks of United. Thus, you might imagine it didn't take very long before the share plan became rudderless in a sea of tension. Now, despite all of these failures, it's important to keep in mind that over half the company was owned by just some of the employees. This means that collectively, these employees were not without significant power. And herein lies the rub. If you want to run a successful employee ownership program, you must do everything to keep your employees on side, or you literally risk losing control of your company. This is precisely what happened. Amidst the tensions and inequalities, any hope of saving the company was completely lost. And finally, in the year 2000, just 12 months before United filed for Chapter 11, pilots seeking a wage deal staged a slowdown. They refused to fly overtime, making it impossible for the company to stick to its schedule. They taxied at the slowest rate they could, and they flew low intentionally to burn more fuel. And apparently, one pilot even walked off a fully loaded 747. As you might imagine, this hit the company pretty hard. In terms of on-time performance, in the year the employee share plan was introduced, they hit 81%, one of the best in the industries. In 2000, in the summer, it was as low as 40%, the lowest of any airline in North America, and they finished the year with a 61% on-time performance. Now, it is important to acknowledge that the early 90s and even the 2000s were difficult for most airlines. Furthermore, budget carriers like Southwest had entered the market, and they were squeezing the more traditional airlines with very low-cost fares. And as many of you would so vividly remember, September 11, 2001 changed the world forever, including air travel. We can't say the employee share plan was entirely to blame, but one might make the case that it significantly accelerated United's demise, as employees were far from ready to stand up to save their company. What's more, had it been done well, there's a chance the share plan could have actually saved this from happening to begin with. Done well, you say? United might have failed to arrive on time, but that doesn't mean all employee share plans are a bad idea. I said earlier that a great culture is supported by everybody and spearheaded by management. This is the first lesson. It doesn't matter how big or small your organization is. If you're looking to give your employees ownership, then it must be 110% backed by senior management. Next, employees must feel like they are actually owners. The best companies spend time educating their employees about what ownership means and how it can be of benefit to them. These themes are worked into all company training, communication, and speeches, and then they are supported by giving the employees the tools and the autonomy to make decisions that impact the company and ultimately that employee. Finally, as the late great Charlie Munger has said,
the basic rule on incentives is you get what you reward for. So if you have a dumb incentive system, you get dumb outcomes.
This was no more apparent than in United's case. When all was said and done, it just wasn't worth it for the employees to put in the work. If you want to implement a program like this, then it must be very clear how someone's work will benefit them both now and into the future.